This. Damn, I can't do the good one. What is all that? All right. Who is Zoom user?
What the heck? Is that?
Oh, what's up, Demetrius?
What does it say Zoom user?
I don't know. Good question. I was like, who is that?
Let me see if I can change that.
Your dreads are way longer than I thought they were.
No, I think it's just because my face is in the camera.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know how to change that.
All right. And maybe just because you logged in just by clicking it and not using logging in with your account, you know?
Yeah.
That's probably why. We'll give everybody a couple minutes. No issues with the internet, things like that. I hope there's no one at the office expecting me to be there at the office just because I'm virtual.
Yeah, no. It shouldn't probably. I don't think anybody's up there today.
I know Tommy was there earlier, but he left because of the Wi-Fi. So, but it should be good after today. We'll have Wi-Fi, and that'll be accessible for everybody now, which will be nice.
So we're not gonna have it like later today. It's not gonna be ready later today.
Yeah, it should be. They said it should be ready by 4.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully we can. Hopefully it don't take them 4 hours to get that in there. But you never know. It is a union building.
Yeah, because we have we got like 4 virtuals at like 4, from starting like from 4 o'clock, I think.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm probably gonna do everything from the house today because we have sits at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just like it should be. But I mean, training class today, it's gonna be more informative because we're gonna go over a very like important part of the presentation, and we can role play it back and forth if you guys like at the end here. But just I'm gonna be going over kind of a lot of information. Typically, you know, the training classes I do is more information based, and then you kind of just take it and run with it in the field. But today we're going to go over, I mean, my job is to get you guys familiar with building the need and a list of concerns. Okay. So, I mean, we'll give everybody a couple more minutes to hop on here. Spotlight myself so everyone can see it. The hair's looking okay today. Couple grays over here. They get rid of those bad boys. I told April she's giving me grays. All right. All right. All right. You got another 2 personals in. Okay. We're just getting couples in here. Okay. I'll wait for Demetrius. Demetrius, you there? Whoa. Okay. All right. I don't know why I'm just doing this on and off like this. X out of the internet and do that. Expose all tabs. Way less processes running. Okay. All right. So I'm not waiting for anybody else. All right. So, like I said to you guys before, what we're going to be going over today in the script like takes place after the term and hole drawing. Okay. So I'm sure Rachel, you've seen this in the presentation. Demetrius, you've seen, this in the presentation as well. Once you get done showing them that you're the expert in life insurance, this is when you're going to start breaking down what they have and their needs, right? So the main reason why this is very important, because this is where we can visually represent to them needs and concerns that aren't really tangible, if that makes sense, right? So we need to paint a big picture for them here, and the better picture we paint for them, the more that they're going to see a need for it. All right. So right now, what we're doing is we're not creating a problem. We're just bringing the problem to light. So there's a lot of different moving pieces with this part of the presentation, and it's not going to be the same for every single person, right? So what I'm going to do is just kind of go over a generic version of it, and then you can use certain parts of it to kind of build it for that family, if that makes sense, right? So the main thing we're doing here, like I said, is painting a picture for them. Okay. So when you're going over the list of concerns, if it's for a union member, right, we want to make sure that we mention that we're working with the labor advisory board on these lists of concerns. Okay. So the introduction that I use to even get into it. So once you get out of the term and whole, you ask them, hey, you have term life, you have whole life, which do you think is better for your family situation? And then they answer, right? And you say, yeah, that's what most members say, right? The next part is the list of concerns. So typically the way I started is, so Joe and Mary, I'm sure we've all gone through benefit changes and contract negotiations through work. And it seems like nowadays it's more give than it is take, right? So we're starting to get less, and we're starting to, get less and at the same time give back more. But, during the contract negotiations and benefit changes, the members, you guys, you brought a list of concerns to our company that you wanted to make sure that you guys had permanent and portable solutions for those concerns, right? So typically, if they're a union member, I mention their labor advisory board. Like if they're a Teamsters union member, mention their union president, right? Now, their union president, Teamsters are pretty easy. It's Jimmy Hoffa, James Hoffa. It's been a Hoffa on the board of Teamsters for the last 60 years. It's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. Okay, so the way the labor and this will help you guys kind of explain it to them. The way our company works is our union, our PR team meets with the head of these unions. So they meet with these union members, and their union president and approves our program for their members. So he looks through all the benefits, everything that's set up for them, the pros and the cons, and he approved our company. He didn't just flip through a piece of paper or a phone book and say, hey, this life insurance company looks good, let's go with that, right? They sought us out because we're union as well. Now, the Labor Advisory Board is made up of 50 union presidents. So there's 50 union presidents on this Labor Advisory Board. On the Labor Advisory Board itself, what their job is to do is make decisions that better their unions, right? Because if you guys think about this, the only way that a union president gets on board or becomes a union president is how? Right? He's voted in. He doesn't just take the position because he's a senior officer. He's voted into that position, right? So, and if he wants to stay in that position, he's going to have to get the people behind him to vote him back in again, right? So he's not going to approve bad programs that's going to hurt his members. He's only going to approve programs that will help them, right? Now, the Labor Advisory Board makes decisions based on every single one of their unions, right? So the Labor Advisory Board, they brought us a list of concerns that you, the members, wanted to address, right? And the list of concerns, you can see that there's 6 of them there. Like in the script, there's 6 concerns. The first one being lack of member-owned benefits. So typically what they found is most members had life insurance through work or had benefits through work. But as soon as they quit, fired, or retired, those benefits went away. And that really did end up hurting a lot of families that were relying on those benefits and that they thought that they were permanent, right? So that's the first one. Now, the second concern is final expense protection. So funerals and final expenses. So typically what they found out is that, whenever a member passes away, the surviving spouse is left with that burden of the funeral costs. They have to end up paying for it all at once too, right? And they found that to be a huge problem and concern for a lot of our members, right? So when I'm in the presentation, the first normal list of concern that I go over, I'm not sure, I'm just gonna hold up. There we go. So the first concern I usually go over with them is right when I get done with the term and hold drawing. So this is all done here, right? Term versus hold. Right when this pops up is when I start that. I said, now, the union members, yourselves, the members, you guys are made up of a bunch of different people in your union, and you basically have a union president. And your union president is on the labor advisory board, and that's made up of about 50 different unions and associations throughout the United States, right? And their job is to make sure that you guys have permanent benefits set up and make sure that your concerns are taken care of. So they came up with a big list of concerns for us, and we narrowed them down to about 6 of them. So the first concern is lack of member-owned benefits, meaning you have great benefits through work, Joe and Mary, but the problem and concern with those benefits is that once you quit, fire, retire, all those workplace benefits go away, right? So basically, all of our programs, they're permanent to you as a person, not your union. So if you did quit, fire, retire, you still get to keep these benefits. I like to mention that in there for them. Now, the second concern is final expense protection, making sure that their funeral and final expenses were taken care of, right? And in the script, it says, basically what they found is that whenever a family member passes away, the surviving member of the family, they're left with a big burden of paying for that funeral all by themselves and typically all at once, right? So, what they found out is that that's a big problem because a lot of members don't have that money set aside for a funeral, right? Now, what I want you guys to do with this situation here is make it unique to them, if that makes sense. We're going to list all of the concerns, and then we're going to basically jump into each one of them and explain them and paint the picture for them, right? So final expense protection is making sure that the funeral is paid for and the expenses afterwards are paid for, right? Because a funeral nowadays, and good question, like what you really want to do in this situation here is ask them questions. Questions are going to sell them at this point, right? So I would say, Mary and Joe, do you know how much a funeral costs nowadays? And some people are going to know, some people don't know, right? Now, for our slides, it's pretty easy. We could just click a button and it'll tell them how much a burial costs right there. So I would say, Joe, you can see on the screen right there, an earth burial nowadays, about $7,000 to $15,000, right? But just like your milk, your eggs, your bread, your gas, right? Every 20 years, prices are doubling. So 20 years down the road, we're looking at $20,000 to $30,000, not 7 to 15. And depending on their age, if they're like typically within our age bracket, project out 20 more years past that, right? Because that'll only put me at 70. I'm 30. If you put 20 years in, we're looking at 50, 20 more years, I'm looking at 70. Typically, life expectancy of people, anywhere from 70 to 80 years old, right? So projecting that 40 years out is going to make them see a better picture, right? So if we have 10 to 15 nowadays, 7 to 15 nowadays, we're looking at 15 to 30, 20 years down the road. 20 years after that, we're probably looking at anywhere from, $40,000 to $60,000 at that point for the same funeral, right? And that's because funerals, there's not a set price for a funeral. There's no like McDonald's menu board that says cremation's this much, funeral's this much. They base it off of what they see, right? And there's a lot of variable expenses with a funeral. Depends on how many people are going to be there. Depends on how many cars are going to be in the procession, how many limos they need to rent, right? How many flowers they got to buy, how long they have to rent the hall for, right? All that stuff is variable. Depends on how many people are going to be there. Depends on the time of the year. Depends on how busy the funeral home is at that time, right? A lot of that stuff is not a set price, right? So what I want you guys to typically do here is project 20 years back and then 20 years forward. So I would say, Joe, Mary, you're nail on the head. Funerals nowadays are about $10,000 to $15,000. You're right around that same price, right? But 20 years ago, funerals were probably like $5,000 to $10,000, right? You probably remember getting gas in the 90s, right? If they're old enough, they probably remember getting gas in the 90s, and it was like $1. It's almost 3 now. Right? So every single year, inflation hits everything with our with in the United States. Everything. Right? So inflation is like 3%, 3 point something percent, right? So every single 20 years, that what we're paying for something now is going to double. I wish paychecks would double. I wish income would double, right? But unfortunately, it's not how that works, right? So final expenses, you want to make sure that you get a firm number from them. Ask them what they think a funeral costs, because you're going to run into some people who think a funeral costs 60 grand. I'm telling you, younger people have no idea how much a funeral costs. They've never had to go through it. Older people will be like, yeah, I know how much a funeral costs. I just had to bury my uncle last week. And they'll be like, yep, $10,000 to $15,000. You paid about $16,000, right? So you really want to ask them a question here about that. Like, have you ever had to deal with that experience? Have you ever, paid for a funeral, right? Now, I usually write their number out. So on here on the side, like I have a little pen, and you can do it with your mouse too, or you can type it in, right? Usually I would break this down to them and say, you're nowadays about 7 to 15,000 for a funeral. You're about 20 years down the road. So what we're looking at, what we're looking at for you is probably anywhere from, 15 to 30,000 for that same funeral. And that's considering somebody that's in their 50s, right? Somebody that's in their 30s, right? We're probably projecting out a little bit more, projecting anywhere from 30 to 60,000 for that same funeral. Right? And then I usually tell them, now this is actually the only area where our company suggests to use whole life insurance to protect. And I'll write WL right there. Right? So do you guys have any questions about final expense protection, explaining how it works to them, or just explaining what they need and showing them what they need?
How do you close out? Well, how do you close out from that and then transition to the next one? Is that what you were saying at the end?
Yeah. So what I would, that's what I would say. I'd say, final expense protection, you could see, typically what it would recommend for somebody in your situation, typically anywhere from 30 to 60,000, to make sure that the final expenses wouldn't be a burden to anybody. Right. And then I would say, any questions about final expense protection? Right. And then I would say the next concern that they brought to our attention, or the third concern they brought to our attention, or the third concern that your union brought to our attention, is making sure that the income was protected. Right? So loss of income. Now, the script is pretty good at describing the basics of it. So it's like, Joe, imagine, your family, Joe, imagine you're the main income, earner in your family. And if they lost your income, typically wouldn't be able to survive without the breadwinner's earnings, right? Same goes if Mary, if we lost you, right? What I typically say in this situation is kind of the same exact thing, but it's a little bit easier for them to understand. I typically would say, Joe, now you guys rely on each other's income, right? Because you really don't want to single somebody out in the family there, because we might turn them off to it. If you go, Joe, are you the main breadwinner? And Mary works too, right? Or if Mary doesn't work, it doesn't mean that she doesn't help the family out. I would always say, now, Joe, Mary, do you guys rely on each other's income? And they would typically say yes. If they're younger and they're still building their family, typically they have somebody relying on their income. Or if you found out through rapport that Mary's not working right now, use that. So I would say, Mary and Joe, your guys' union, they brought us a concern here, to protect the income for you guys, making sure that your paycheck comes into the house every single month for the next 3 to 5 years. So Joe, God forbid if you didn't come home from work tomorrow, at least your paycheck would still come into the house every single month and keep the bills paid, keep the lights on, the food on the table, make sure that your family didn't have to, adjust their lifestyle for the next 3 to 5 years. They could still do the same exact things that they were doing while you were here. Now, if we know Joe's the only breadwinner, kill him off. Right? I don't want you to be like, Joe, you're going to die tomorrow. Your family needs this money. Right? What I mean is create a scenario where Joe doesn't come home from work. Paint the picture, right? Mary, if Joe did not come home from work tomorrow, right, how much more difficult would your job be to raise the kids and take care of everything at the house? And they would say a lot more difficult. And I would say, yeah, I would assume so, right? Because you were relying on that paycheck to come into the house every single month, right? So to be honest with you, Joe, your paycheck and yourself, you're kind of like the heartbeat of the house, right? You're the heartbeat of the family, right? There might have been some times where you got a good paycheck and a bad paycheck. You might have missed a week. You might have got bonus. Your paycheck in your life is going to go up and down, up and down, up and down, right? You might have good days. You might have bad days. But at the end, you're going to figure it out, right? Because you're still here to figure it out. The only way you're not going to figure it out, right, is if your heart stops. And at that point, what else stops, Joe? And he would say, my paycheck. I would be like, you're right. Because you can't go to work anymore, Joe. You're not here to go to work. Your paycheck stops as well. So it's like an economic heart attack for your family, a financial heart attack, if you want to tell them that. Right? Because if Joe is the heartbeat of the house and the heart stops working, guess what happens to the house? It goes away. Everything that they put into it, everything that they built over these years, it's all going to come to a halt. Right? So, Joe, what income protection would do for you is it would make sure that the next 3 to 5 years of your income was protected. So if you didn't come home from work tomorrow, your family could still live the same lifestyle for the next 3 to 5 years. Mary would still have your income for the next 3 to 5 years, right? And right here at this point too, guys, what you can do, and typically what I like to do as well, is I'll break down what they make right here. So I would say, Joe, typically what do you make a year? They would know, right? So and you might have to do a little bit of quick math here, but once you do it over and over again, it'll be pretty easy. You can keep your phone out or anything. So if Joe is making, I don't know, let's say Joe's making $450,000 a year here. So Joe, you're making $50,000 a year, right? Times, let's just say 5 years. That's $250,000, Joe, that you're bringing into the family over the next 5 years. So Joe, right now you're a $250,000 asset to the family. So you're going to make that $250,000 over the next 5 years, just by going to work, waking up every day, right? The only way that, like I said, the only way that's not going to come into your family is if, God forbid, something happens and you don't come home from work. But what this would do, Joe, it would give your family time for the next 3 to 5 years to figure it out, right? Because that $250,000, Joe, is never going to bring you back. But what it's going to do is going to give your family time to move forward and grow and progress as a family. Right? Now, if both spouses work, use both their numbers. Right? So you would say, Joe and Mary, are you guys relying on each other's income? And they would say, yes, we are. Okay, great. So Mary, typically, what are you bringing home every year? She says about 30,000. And then let's say Joe says about 30,000. Right? Well, if we do 3 times 5, what's that? 150? $150,000 for Joe, $150,000 for Mary. I always want to show these numbers to them because it'll visually represent what they need in that part, right? So income protection, next 3 to 5 years, Joe, of your income is protected right there. That's actually 5 years of your income being protected. So if you didn't come home from work, like I want you guys to use that a lot. Like Joe, if you did not come home from work tomorrow, your family would get $150,000. Basically, they would get, about $2,500 every single month for the next 3 to 5 years. So income is very, very important to a lot of our families. You know, it's like the lifeline. So with income protection, do you guys have any questions on what that would do for your family? And I would say no. Right? Or if they did, they would say how does it come out every month or lump sum, or they can do it both ways. They can do it every single month, 2,500 comes out, or they can get a lump sum of $150,000. Whatever's easier for them. I would recommend just the annuity, having it come out every single month, unless they're good with money. Right? Now, want you guys to also, this part right here, it's not uncommon to run into people that have life insurance. Right? It's not uncommon. People have life insurance already before they see us. Right? Now, typically, they're going to have like a term policy or a bigger policy through work or something like that. When they have coverage and we know that they have coverage, we can spend it right here. Right? We can say, Joe, now you said that you had that $100,000, you know, through State Farm, right? Perfect. So what that's going to do, Joe, that's going to take care of about 4 years of your income to make sure if something happened, you wouldn't have that loss of income. Right? So I'd say you did a fantastic job of taking care of that right there. And I would scratch that section out. I spent that coverage already. So you can't tell me down the road, I have 100,000 already. Yeah, you did until I spent it. Right? Like I really don't want you guys to argue with people about their coverage. It doesn't get anywhere. Right? If they're really dead set on knowing that they have it, like what you want to do is kind of spend it in that situation. Right? Show them that they have it. It's great. I'm glad you have this. You know, the 4 years of your income being protected there, right? But Joe, if something happens, right, that money's going to get probably taken into pretty quickly, and it's really there to protect your income. It's not really there to come out all in one lump sum. Does that make sense? And I'll be like, yeah. So income protection is typically where you're going to see a lot of people already having coverage, right? And this is, keep in mind, income protection as well is any coverage through work. Any kind of coverage they got through work is income protection too. So once again, spend that. Now, if you know that 5 years of their income comes out to like $150,000 and they have coverage already of $100,000, shade off most of it. Right? So what you did a great job there. You know, Joe, you got that policy for $100,000. All right, so it's probably only going to show a gap of about 50,000 there for you, right? And you could basically do the math of it right here. They can see that. So work coverage is income protection, right? Any kind of life insurance that they have outside of work, if it's a term policy, typically what it's going to be used for is income protection. Typically why they got it, right? So if I were to wrap it up with them, I would say, no, Joe, that was the third concern, is making sure that your income is protected, making sure that your paycheck comes into the house every single month. Do you have any questions on how that would work for your family? And they say no, right? Or do you have any questions on why that would be a big concern for a lot of our members? And I would say no, right? Now, do you guys have any questions about income protection, painting the picture there? Okay. What I would recommend in eApp, after the needs analysis pops up, after you fill everything out on there, there's going to be videos that pop up that'll explain final expense protection, that'll explain income protection, mortgage protection, and kids' education. I would recommend watching those videos a bunch of times, right? Because there's a lot of good verbiage in there that'll help you paint a picture for them. But the one thing you want to do when you're painting a picture for income is take that breadwinner out of the picture, right? Or take one of the family members out of the picture. Making sure that if something happened, they knew that, hey, this is what your life is going to look like after that. So Joe, if you don't come home from work tomorrow, is the cable company still going to ask for the cable bill? Right? Is the power company still going to ask for the power bill? I'm going to say, yeah. I'm going to say, yeah, they are. you know? So this would be a way to make sure your bills will be paid for the next 3 to 5 years. Right? Now, I want you guys to realize my tone here too, right? I'm not like happy and giddy with them right now. I'm very serious and I'm stern because I want them to pay attention to this and I want them to realize we're going over a very serious subject, right? So before this, you can kind of joke around with them a little bit. You can have some fun with them going over the no cost benefits, but this part in the presentation, like after term and whole, is where you should flip the switch and kind of get a little bit more serious. Right? Should be like kind of like an emotional roller coaster for them. Like the beginning, we're going up the hill, we're having some fun, right? I'm going over the no cost, it's great. And then down the hill, getting serious, right? Then we can go back up the hill a little bit, go over the needs analysis, and then back down into being more serious, right? Use your voice to help that process. It's a very, very valuable tool. You know, there's ways to say something. You know, you can almost say anything you want with a smile on your face, and typically it won't really offend too many people. Josh Yarenko is very good at this. Okay. But the one thing that gets across to more people than anything else is the tonality in your voice. People can know if you're happy or sad just by the tone of your voice. Right. So at no point should it be like monotonous and robotic. It should always have some kind of influx to it. Right. But this is a point where, like I said, we're going to get a little bit more serious with the tone. Okay. Before I move on to the mortgage protection or rent protection, do you guys have questions on income protection? No? Okay. So a good way, and I don't want to get you some fire here, so you can kind of explain this to members. But typically, like a good way to explain or spend their income protection already is to kind of give them an example of, let's just say, Demetrius, me and you, you know, we needed to go out to the store real quick and we went to 7-Eleven and we needed to get milk, eggs, and bread. And let's just say that cost $15, right? And when we went there, we left the house and in my right pocket, I had a $100 bill. And in my left pocket, I had a $20 bill. What do you think? What am I going to use to pay that with? Are you going to use the $20 bill or are you going to use the $100 bill? What'd you say? You're muted.
Probably the 20.
You would say the 20. Okay, that's the right answer to that question, right? Why would you say the $20 bill though?
I don't want to break that 100.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because what happens when you break that 100?
You got a lot of extra bills.
Right, and then you typically usually spend that money pretty quickly too, right after, right?
Yep.
So that's the same way your income protection is going to work, right? So if they have a bigger policy, typically what's going to happen is they're going to use a certain small amount for it for the funeral, and they're going to break that $100 bill, and then they're just going to spend the rest of it. All right. So the final expense protection for the funeral, that's like having a $20 bill and paying for the funeral with that, right? And then using that $100 bill to take care of the big needs with the income protection. Right. So at that point, I can make sure that they have their coverage right there that they already have, and still make sure they have final expense protection too. Right. So I just spent their coverage and I didn't even spend it on anything. I just did a theoretical observation of what most people do in that situation. Right. So that's a very good way to spend income protection. Right. A very good way to sell income protection is it's called like the ATM close, if you wanted to use that. But let's just say, Rachel, in your basement right now, you got an ATM, right? And that ATM every single month is going to spit out $3,000. Every single month, it's going to spit out $3,000, right? Now, there's a version of the ATM that's just going to give you $3,000 every single month, right? If it breaks down, you get nothing, right? But if it's keep working, you're going to get $3,000. Now, you can buy that ATM with a warranty, or you can buy it without the warranty. Now, the ATM with the warranty is only going to spit you out, $2,500 every single month. right? You're not going to get 3,000, you're going to get 2,500 every single month. Would you take the ATM with the warranty? And you knew that the warranty, if something happened, it would be fixed and it would still give you that $2,500 every single month, no matter what, if it was broken or fixed because of the warranty. Would you take the one with the warranty or the one without the warranty?
Definitely the warranty.
The one with the warranty, right? Why would you take the one with the warranty though?
Because then it's guaranteed. You know, if you don't have the warranty and it breaks down, then you're kind of screwed.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, right, you nail on the head, for sure. So, you know, none of us have an ATM in the basement, right? It'd be good if we did, but in this situation, Rachel, you're the ATM. You're going to get up and go to work every single month, every single day, and you're going to bring that $3,000 home every month, right? The only way you're not going to is if you're not here anymore, right? And at that point, nothing happens. Your family gets nothing. But at least if you have income protection, that would make sure that you at least had a warranty on yourself. So if something did happen to you, your family still had that money every single month, right? Everyone knows how an ATM works. It's the same thing, right? It's a very good way to paint a picture for them without actually using them in the situation, right? And everyone's very familiar with how warranties work and that too, right? So that's a very good way to kind of explain income protection for someone who's not getting the point, right? If you really had to hard sell somebody on that, right? Typically, I don't do that off the bat. You know, I usually save that for the end, but income protection, you kind of want to make sure that they understand, like I said, if something happens to the main breadwinner, that the rest of your life is going to look way different unless you have some kind of protection with it, especially if they're relying on their income. Now, if you're in a situation to where no one's relying on their income, they're a single person, or they're retired, or they're a younger person without a family, income protection might not be a big concern for them, right? I always say, is there anybody relying on your income? If they say no, then you don't got to worry about it. Go through it, right? All right. You guys have any questions on income protection before I go on?
You said if they're like retired, if they don't have anybody that relies on their income, you said you still want to go through it, or just say cross it out, go to the next one.
I mean, you don't have to dive into it really deeply, but I would still mention income protection. What it would do is it would make sure the next 3 to 5 years of your income came into your family to take care of any needs. And I would say, to be honest with you right now, you don't really have anybody relying on your income. So this might not be a huge concern for you. And I know, scratch it out.
Okay.
All right.
Mm.
Just the only reason why is because typically what the needs analysis is going to recommend for people to protect their income is a 10-year renewable and convertible term. Right. So it would protect, you know, the next 10 years, but it would protect a certain amount of money. Right. And if there's no one relying on their income at that point, then term, you know, really wouldn't be the best option for them. Does that make sense, Demetrius? Okay. Rachel, any questions on income protection? Okay, great. So the next concern that the Labor Advisory Board brought to our attention, right? Typically, that's what I say getting into the next concern. The next concern that the Labor Advisory Board brought to your attention, or if they're not a union member, you know, if they're like a referral or a child safe or a will kit, you could say, you know, the next concern a lot of people have for life insurance, or the next area where most people have needs for life insurance, is mortgage protection or rent protection. Right? And this one's pretty straightforward, guys. It's not too difficult. This one's pretty easy. You can just ask them, like, you guys rent or own? And if they say rent, okay, great. What do you pay in rent every month? If it's like $800, multiply that by 12 and then multiply it by 5. I would say give them a solid 5 years of rent protection. So, you know, let's say their rent's $800 a month, which is kind of crazy. But if it's $800 a month, all right, multiply it by 12, and we're looking at, I don't know, 96. Is that what it is? right? $9,600 a year. We'll just call it 10. Let's just call it $10,000 a year to live there, right? Multiply that by 5, 50 grand. That's typically what you want to put there, $50,000. To make what that will do is make sure that your family didn't have to pick up and move for the next 5 years. They could still live in the same house and figure it out. It would give them time to figure things out. Right? Now, if they own the house, it's a little easier. All you have to ask them is what you owe on the mortgage. Right? Do you own the house? They're gonna be like, oh yeah, well the bank owns it, but yeah, right? Whatever their balance is. If their balance is 150,000, write that. If their balance is 200,000, write that. Or mention it to them. Make sure they understand that that's what it costs for their house. Now, the way to kind of paint the picture here is you could just ask them. I would say, Joe and Mary, if you had to name your biggest asset, what would you say is the biggest thing or the biggest asset that you own? And they would typically say their house, right? You might get a couple people saying, my quad out back or something like that, right? Just at that point, like, don't laugh. Just say, yeah, it would probably be your house, right? They're like, yeah, it's the house. So I would ask them now, do you have a mortgage on the house or do you have it all paid off? If they have a mortgage, go ask them how much the mortgage is. Ballpark, how much you got left on the house. Right? Now, if they have it paid off, right, mortgage protection is not a huge concern for them because it's already paid off. So you can scratch that box out. Right? Or if they're a single person, right, and they're renting, once again, scratch it off. Like, not a huge concern for them. Because if something happened to that single person, they were renting the house, who's going to worry about what their rent is? No one's living there, right? But if they're, a single mother of 3 kids, and if something happens, there's 3 people that are relying on her and relying on that house, right? So you want mortgage protection or rent protection at that point. So typically asking them what the biggest asset that they own is, and then letting them know, hey, that asset, it's a big asset for you guys, but unfortunately, until you have it paid off from the bank, it's actually your biggest concern or it's your biggest liability. You can even use that. I would say most people's biggest liability is their mortgage payment. Most of our members' biggest concern or biggest liability is making sure that their mortgage is paid every single month. Right? So what they did is they set up mortgage protection for every one of our members so that if something happened to you, that the house is paid off. So Mary, if Joe did not come home from work tomorrow, the mortgage would actually be paid off and your family could still live in that house. I couldn't think of a bigger asset or a bigger legacy to leave for your family than a house. Right? So with mortgage protection, you kind of just want to make sure you let them know that most homeowners have a mortgage, right? And the problem with having a mortgage is that you don't own the house, the bank owns the house, right? So if something happens to you, the bank doesn't care. They're still going to ask for that same mortgage payment every single month. That's why foreclosure rates are really high. That's why most people foreclose on a house is because the one surviving member can't afford the mortgage anymore. All right. So once again, I usually write out what they owe on the house. Let's say if it's $100,000, I'll write $100,000 in mortgage protection and make sure that if either one of you, Joe and Mary, passed away, the other person could pay off the house and you could live there and not have to worry about a roof over your head. All right, mortgage protection, like I said, it's pretty easy to explain. You guys have any questions on mortgage protection at all? No? Okay. Then I would say, the fifth concern that a lot of our members have, or the fifth concern that, the unions brought to our attention, or the fourth area where most people use life insurance at, right, is protecting your kids' education or making sure that your family didn't have any debt passed out to them. Right now, at this point, once again, questions sell. And so, Joe, Mary, I'm sure you want your kids to go to school, right? And they'd be like, yep. I'd say, okay, well, at least what our company says basically is if you're not here, at least give them an opportunity to go to school. Maybe, open up a business, go to trade school, something like that. What this would do is if you didn't come home from work tomorrow, Joe, or if you died, it would give each of your kids $100,000 so that they could have that opportunity. They could go to school. They could use that to open up a business, right? The average cost of a school nowadays, Joe, anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000. What this would do is make sure that, little Joe actually had money set aside for him. And if you didn't come home, he could at least go to school and better himself and better his family. Right? Or you can just ask them, how important is your kid's education? That's a very good question to ask them. Mary and Joe, how important is your kid's education? They would say pretty important. You're not going to meet a family who's not really too concerned about their kid's education. Now, you might run into some people who don't have like kids right now, or their kids are grown and they're out of the house and you don't have to worry about the education. Go after the debt at that point. So it says kids' education or debt. So you can ask them, like, do you guys have any, kind of crazy outstanding credit card debt, student loans, car payments, anything like that? Right? Because that debt or those assets that you're leaving, that goes to your estate too. Your debt gets passed into your estate. It doesn't just get wiped away. Right? So if someone's got $50,000 in debt and their estate's worth $100,000, they really only have $50,000. Because that money got to go back to pay the debt off. Right? So you can mark up their debt right here. So you can write like credit cards, maybe 10 grand, car, another 20,000. You got student loans, looking at like, maybe 50,000 for those. Right? So off the bat here, you're probably looking at about $80,000, in debt right now. So you want to make sure that if something happens to you, Mary or Joe, that money doesn't get, passed down, or that debt doesn't get passed down to your family. Right? So most of the time, it's going to recommend accidental death benefit to take care of the child education or the debt. Main reason being that if they have younger kids, which means typically they're going to be younger as well. And usually anybody that passes away that's under 50 years old, the number one cause of death in America is accidents. So they're going to pass away accidentally. They're just playing the numbers here. After 50, it's heart disease, but under 50, typically looking at an accident. Right? So do you guys have any questions on child education or explaining how that works to them? This one's pretty easy too.
I have one question.
Yep.
So is it going to recommend another AD&D benefit on top of the one that they already got?
Well, it'll be accidental death benefit. So it'll be, yeah. I mean, it'll be way, way more. Like the one that they get from their unions, typically like 4,000.
Yeah.
The one that we would provide them would be like 100,000 and more.
Okay.
And I would usually recommend that for people who would have like a younger family, and they need a bunch of protection for not a lot of money. Accidental coverage is, generally across most life insurance companies, the same price. It's about $8.34 for every 100,000. And the max that they can get with our company is 200,000. Right? So if they're not a union member, typically what I say here now, the last concern or even if they are, it doesn't matter. I usually tell them the last concern anyway, is making sure that they can qualify for it with health and making sure that it's affordable too. So I would say, like, typically, even though there's a bunch of concerns out there, and a lot of these are really big concerns for our members, what they wanted us to do is they wanted us to show you benefits that you guys liked, but also benefits you could afford. So basically, that's what the next part goes into, is that needs analysis for you, right? Not just roll right into the needs analysis. So now that's not the last thing we should do here, though. We need to get them to sell themselves on this. That's why this is a very important part of the presentation, because we're getting them to sell themselves. We're explaining the needs. We're bringing the concerns to light. We're showing them the problem areas, right? And we're also going to ask them, if something happened to you, Joe, which one of these concerns is the most important to you, right? So if I were to say, Joe, the verbiage for that, Jesus Christ. Oh, sorry. Okay. So the concern, sorry. I'm just reading text message. I apologize. So and I would wrap this list of concerns up by basically saying, Joe and Mary, there's a lot of concerns there for you guys. Your union, like I said, brought a list of 6 of them to us to make sure that we had for you guys. Now I'm going to ask you guys a question, and it's a pretty important question. And keep in mind, there's no right or wrong answer to it. But Joe, if you did not come home from work tomorrow, or if you died tomorrow, and you can make sure that one of these concerns was covered for the rest of your life, or was covered forever, which would you say is the most important to you? Right? You'll get them to sell themselves. So typically asking them, if he says income protection, I would go, okay, great, Joe, why would you say income protection? And he'd probably say something like, I don't know, like my paycheck right now is the only one that's coming into the house, so everyone's relying on it. And I would say, okay, so making sure your paycheck comes into the house every single month, right? But what does your paycheck actually do for the family? And you'd say, does everything, puts the food on the table, make sure that the phones are paid for, make sure that we can watch TV for cable, right? What I'm getting at here is you want to ask them which one is the most important to them. Because number one, when we're going over the quotes for them, you kind of want to leave the one that's most important to them, like, still there. Like, if you're ever reducing somebody down, try not to take away the thing that they thought was the most important to them, because you're devaluing their opinion, right? So, excuse me. So if they say income protection, mortgage protection, final expense protection, rent protection, whatever they say here, ask them why. Great answer, Joe. You know, most of our members actually say the same thing. Why would you choose to protect your income, though? Maybe like, oh, I don't know, just because my paycheck's very important to the house, and if it doesn't come in, like, they'll say something about their paycheck. Or if they say final expenses, they'll probably be like, well, I don't want anyone to pay for my funeral. Now, you're going to want to ask these questions independently. So you're going to ask Joe this question, and then you're going to ask Mary the same exact question. You're going to say, Mary, same question to you. If you died tomorrow and you could guarantee that one of these was taken care of for the rest of your life, which would you say is the most important? And she would answer, right? And you figure that out. Now, if they say 2 different things, that's okay. All right, let's say they said income protection and mortgage protection. I would go, great, Mary Jo, you know, your concerns, you know, fall along with the list of all of our other members' concerns. A lot of our members felt the same exact way you do. Now, basically, you know, what they did to help out with those concerns is they set up that 4th no cost benefit for you guys, which is your needs analysis. All right. So now, have you guys ever been to a financial advisor before? No. Only reason why I ask is, you know, if you went to a financial advisor, they probably charge anywhere from $600 to $800 to even do this, right? The good thing is your union sets you up with this at no cost. So basically, what I like to do, what I like about it the most is it takes into account everything you have going on in your current situation, lets you know if it sees any gaps in any coverages. If it sees gaps, it'll recommend some ways to cover those. If it doesn't see any gaps, it won't recommend anything, right? And at that point, I switch right into the needs analysis and I break that down for them, right? So do you guys have any questions on this 4 areas where most people use life insurance or the list of concerns?
Yeah. How much time? I mean, how much time do we typically spend on this section in general? Because it doesn't sound like a lot, but I know we don't want to go in too much detail. Like we don't want to ramble on, but like how long do you typically spend on this part?
So this part, it varies. To be honest with you, you kind of do want to break down and get as much information as you can from them right here too, right? You want to kind of, because right now we haven't figured out, what they have in coverage type yet, but you want to just make sure these concerns are like visual to them, if that makes sense. So you want to break it down. I would say maybe 10, 15 minutes on this, because you're going to be engaging with them back and forth. It's not just going to be you going over it. You're going to be asking them questions and figuring that stuff out. So usually it does take a little bit longer to do this. Now, I want you guys to do this with a purpose, though. I don't want you just to run through the words here. The reason why I want you to do it with a purpose is because when the needs analysis pops up these concerns, it's going to pop up these 4 areas, right? So when the needs analysis says it recommends this amount and you told them it's going to recommend this amount, you look very smart. You look like you know what you're doing, right? So you're building confidence. You're building their confidence in you, and you're building their confidence in the needs analysis at the same time. So when the needs analysis recommends that they pay $280 a month, that's what it recommends. That's to take care of all the needs. I'm not recommending it. The needs analysis is recommending it for your situation. All right, so you can take all the pressure off of you at that point and put it onto the system. Right. And at that point, you can close them the same way by just looking at the laptop. It's pretty easy. But to get back to time constraint on this, I would say maybe 10, 15 minutes. Take a couple minutes to explain final expenses, going over the funeral, how much it costs with them, protecting their income, their mortgage, and the kids' education. But the most important thing of this whole pie chart or the whole list of concerns is asking them if something happens, which one is the most important to them. Getting them to sell themselves on why it's important, and then asking them a follow-up question on why it's important. Right? He might say, my income is important. Why? Because my paycheck. Well, why is your paycheck important to the house, Joe? What does your paycheck do for the house? Right? Any other questions on the list of concerns? Okay. Now, I'm going to pop right into, just because we have some time, I'm going to pop into the needs analysis and kind of show you how it would go through with that. So give me a couple seconds to get it ready here for you. I have to pull it up. I have one already ready to go, I think. It won't let me escape from this. Here we go. Nope, it closed. It's all right, we can do one real quick. All right. All right. So Rachel, have you gone through much of this presentation, like the e-app? Like all the way?
Like on my own?
Yeah, past the needs analysis?
Not yet.
Okay. No worries. All right, I'm gonna get to it right quick. Okay. Give me a second, I'm clicking through these videos for everyone. Boom.
Due to the
All right. So, okay, we're here. We're almost there. All right. So, pop up the share screen button here and get to this. Okay. So, once you get done with the list of concerns, basically letting them know, hey, the last benefit that they had set up for you, which is your fourth no cost benefit, is your needs analysis. Letting them know, hey, the reason why they set up, do you have a financial advisor, Mary and Joe? No, you don't. Okay. Well, the reason why I ask is because typically a financial advisor, they're anywhere from $600 to $800 every single year that you want to see them. And basically, your union sets you up with this needs analysis at no cost. What I love about it is it takes into account everything you have going on in your current situation. It's going to let you know if it sees any gaps in any coverages. If it does see some gaps, it will recommend some ways to cover them. If it doesn't see gaps, it won't recommend anything, right? So basically, Joe here, and then I flip right into the needs analysis, right from the pie chart right into this. So I just share screen. I already have this ready to go. So if you guys are looking at this here, the first top part, it says AIL Plus Health Services Discount Program. This is where they're going to send the information for that AIL Plus card. So they need an email address. All right. Phone number. Address. Right. And then the needs analysis is going to start when you have their names in here. Okay. So I have Joe's name in here because I started it with him. We're going to put Mary in here as well. Mary Fake. And then Mary's birth date. Let's just say like 83. Okay. And then let's say they have a son, Steve. And Steve was born February 8th of 2012. Okay. So once you have the family in there, right? I got everybody in there. I got Joe, I got Mary, I got their son, Steve, right? You could just ask them these questions. Say, Joe, we got you in here. Mary, I got you in here as well. Your last name is same fake. Perfect. Your date of birth, Mary. Boom, boom, boom. And then we're gonna put Steve in here as well. So what's Steve's date of birth? All right. So you got all the kids, you got everybody in the family's name, age, and date of birth in there. You're gonna scroll down a little bit. And the next questions down here, these are some pre-qualifying medical questions. Okay. So I tell them, like, these are pre-qualifying medical questions for you in the needs analysis, right? It's not their family history. It's just the people that are on this application. So if they have family history of diabetes, but they don't have it, they don't have to put it on here. We don't rate off of family history. So I basically just ask them these questions. Say, any internal cancer in the last 2 years, any insulin, diabetes, heart attack, stroke, vascular diseases. Clearly see that they're currently not on oxygen. Terminal illnesses, Alzheimer's, anything like that. Nope. Any tobacco last 12 months, right? It says exclude from application. You don't have to worry about clicking that one. And then the next two down, parole, probation, arrested or convicted of a DUI. So this, anything I click here, those are typically going to be declines. So if there's a check, if they say yes to internal cancer, insulin, diabetes, heart attack, stroke, currently on oxygen, well, this one's not too much. But any of these 5 that are here, they won't be able to apply for coverage. It won't bring up any options for them, right? So it won't even put them into the needs analysis. So if they check off any boxes there, that's how you can know that. Insulin, diabetes, they can still be a trial application for that. So that's why it's okay there. Tobacco is just going to raise their rates a little bit. It's not going to decline them for it. And then parole, probation, DUIs, all that stuff depends on when they left, when they went in, how many DUIs they have, if they've attended classes, things like that. So it's not going to decline them for coverage. It'll just bring up questionnaires. Okay. Once they answer all those questions there, let's just say this family's got a good bill of health. They got nothing on there. The first question under household information is what they bring home monthly. You guys can go for the kill right there. You can just ask them that. The way I like to do it, though, I like to ask it like least intrusive to most intrusive, if that makes sense. So typically I ask them what kind of life insurance they have through work. And we should already know this from the family information guide, right? I would say, Joe, you mentioned you had some life insurance through work, right? Do you know how much it is? Do you know how much the face amount is? Right? And if he says, oh, yeah, like about 10,000. All right, we'll put 10,000 in there. Let's just say Mary's got nothing at work. Then we already asked them a question if they have life insurance outside of work too. Remember, in the family information guys, do you guys have any permanent life insurance in force right now? Right? If they don't have anything outside of work, term whole, don't put anything in there. If they have a policy, guys, this is where you're gonna have to like do this over and over and over and over again to be confident with this. But you'll run into people that swear they have whole life insurance. It's for $100,000 and they pay $30 a month. Now you've seen our rates. Is that possible? No. Right. So it's definitely not a whole life policy. It's probably a term policy. Right. And I would use words like definitely, what it looks like, things like that, so that they understand, like, what you're talking about. But if they're unsure of what they have, don't put anything in here. Because what it's going to do is going to show them what it would recommend in their situation if they had nothing. And then they can see like, oh, I do have 50,000, so it would take care of that. Right? So if they don't know what they have, leave it blank. So let's just say this family example here has nothing. They don't have anything outside of work. The only thing they have coverage-wise is for Joe at work for $10,000. And then the next box down says, do you currently rent or own? Let's just click own here. You'll see the mortgage balance. Let's say it's 100,000. Interest rate, I usually just use like a common interest rate. Common interest rates now are like 3.2%. So I just put 3.2 in there. It's not really going to change up the recommendation much, to be honest. And let's just say he's got 20 years left. Now, mortgage insurance in case of death, if they have it, click yes, and I put the amount in there. If they don't have it, click no. How much they have saved for their kids' education. Mary and Joe, do you have anything saved up for Steve to go to school down the road? Nothing yet? Okay, don't worry. All right. And then the last thing we're going to do is always click checking. Always click checking. Okay. Once we have all that in there, the last thing I do is what they bring home monthly. So I typically ask Joe, what do you bring home monthly after taxes? And just ballpark it, get me close. Because some people are like, I don't know, it varies. Just get me close. Lowball it. Right? Most people will just straight up tell you what they bring home because they understand what we're doing here. But if some people have like, they're like, oh, why do you need that? Well, I don't need it. The needs analysis needs it. And the reason why the needs analysis needs it is because this takes into account, like I said, everything you have going on in your situation. And what it's going to do, it's going to recommend plans for your family based on around about 5% of your income. Right? So what they're going to do is they're going to show you plans, that would take care of 95% of everything with just 5% of your income. Because what they didn't want us to do is show you benefits that you liked, but benefits you couldn't afford. Doesn't make sense, right? No, agree. So if they ever have a rebuttal with you right there, just let them know, hey, the only reason why I'm asking that is so that the needs analysis can determine what you guys would need based on your income. Right? Show them an example. Say there's a huge difference, Joe, between you making $2,000 a month and you making $4,000 a month. Right? Because if you're making $2,000 a month over 5 years, that's close to $100,000. If you're making $3,000 a month over 5 years, you're close to $200,000, right? $150,000, $158,000, whatever it is, right? So it does make a difference one way or the other. So it's going to recommend income protection based on your income. And you told me that was the most important thing to you, right? You can use that right there for them. Normally, I don't have too many people, like maybe 1 out of 100, like hesitate there. Most of the time, you're going to get people telling you what their salary is yearly, right? And there's a little calculator to help you out with that. There's a little calculator. If you hit it, it'll say weekly, bi-weekly, or annually. If they say 50,000 annually, you put it in there, it'll change it to what their income is every month. See how it's changed it to 4,106? But let's just say for this family it's 3,000 and the wife brings home 1,500. So they make about $4,500 as a family. It's not bad money, right? So once you have everything in here, you're going to click the button that says submit. Now it might pop up a couple times. Like you got to put this in here. Just hit submit again. It'll pop through it. If you have everything correct in there, it'll think for maybe 30 seconds or so. You can just tell them, hey, I click submit there and it's starting to think for you and build that plan for your family. Give it a couple of seconds here. Keep in mind, I met with about 4 members earlier today and it's running a little bit slow. Right? Just tell them that. Now, what that's going to pop up once you hit submit, it's going to pop up this summary sheet down here. Now, this is like a cheat sheet for you guys. This is what it's going to recommend for them. So you know what it's going to recommend before it even pops up the videos. So you can see the first thing it's going to recommend is FE for both of these people. FE stands for final expenses. Okay. It's going to recommend $30,000 of whole life insurance in force for both of them. It's going to recommend IP, which is income protection. It's going to recommend 5 years of his income being protected. As you can see on the other side, though, didn't recommend anything for Mary's income protection. What it did recommend, though, is mortgage protection for Joe, kids' education, right? And CR stands for child rider. It recommends Mary having the final expense protection, a guaranteed insurability option on there. Oh, it does recommend income protection for her. Sorry. Income protection. 1 year of her income being protected. So that cheat sheet's for you guys. Even if they've seen it, they wouldn't know what that recommends for them anyway. So you don't have to like be real secretive with it. But you guys will do this enough to know what it's going to recommend anyway. You'll get to that point where it's like, that's why the 100 presentations boot camp, you're going to know at the end of boot camp, typically every person that you sit down with, what it's automatically going to recommend. Because you've done it so many times. Right? So you guys have any questions on what the summary would show down there or like kind of how to read that? It's pretty easy. No? Cool. So once you hit continue here, the next thing that's going to pop up is that mandatory read-off letter. So you guys have to read this letter off to them. You have to do it. Because this letter is going to make sure that they don't want to think about it today, that they gave you a yes or no. You're going to hammer it home for them, right? So make sure you read that letter off. Read it right off to them. Say, hey, bear with me, guys, here. Did you see that letter pop up on your screen? Okay, bear with me. I do have to read this off to you here. They make me read this to you. And just read it to them. Once you get done reading it, though, in your script, what's the next thing it says to do? After the mandatory read-off letter, what's the next thing to do?
So basically, that's right, Rachel. So when that pops up after that mandatory read-off letter, what you guys need to do is stop sharing your screen, get back into face-to-face with them, and read that so basically off to them. So basically, Mary and Joe, the way this works is if I'm going through these benefits with you guys and you're nodding your head thinking I could see why they're set up, why many members are taking advantage of it, then we're going to have you try to qualify today while you got us here. On the flip side, though, Mary and Joe, If we are going through the benefits and you're thinking they're great benefits and all, they just don't serve a need for me and my family, then we wouldn't ask you to qualify, right? But just in fairness to all the members and families we do have to see, they do make it a yes or no decision during your enrollment period, right? They figured they could do this because the benefits, they're a no-brainer. You're going to know one way or another whether or not they help your family, right? I just want to make sure we're on the same page with that. Does that make sense to you, Joe? I usually don't move forward past that point until they give me a verbal yes there. Because what I just told them is they can't think about this. They need to do it right now, or they don't do it at all, right? But once you get done with the so basically there and you get the verbal yes from Mary and Joe, the next thing that's going to pop up is it's going to show basically the videos for what it recommends coverage-wise for them. Now, these were the videos I was talking to you guys about earlier. I want you to watch them. Basically, when this pops up, you're just going to read what it says on the screen. So basically, let's examine your need for final expense protection, Mary and Joe. And I hit continue.
The warmth of family.
Now, can you guys hear that?
Valued things in life. For this reason, saying goodbye to a loved.
No? Okay.
Yeah, I could hear it, but
hear
now it's muted, right?
Yeah, I muted it now. So to be honest, I think this is one of the main videos you should play for them. It's maybe, I think it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds, 3 minutes, it's 3 minutes long, right? It's a very, very short video. It's not that long. They watch commercials for 5 minutes, right? They can watch this. This video does a great job of explaining, number one, what goes into a funeral, what it costs, what's going to happen during that time. And number two, it shows them what the freedom of choice certificate is going to do for their family and explains how that works, right? So the freedom of choice certificate pops in about 1 minute and 40 seconds, or 2 minutes into it. It's about 2 minutes into it, it pops in, minute 45 right there. So I want you guys to watch this video over and over and over and over again so you can explain the freedom of choice certificate to the people, because this is the biggest attribute that our company has. No other company has the freedom of choice certificate. No other company makes it super easy for its members to make sure that the claim is paid very quickly. And to be honest, the better you are at showing them this and explaining how this works to them, the more people are going to ask, how do I get that? Right? And that's the reaction you want there. How do I get that for my family? So, I mean, I can show you guys how I do it really quickly, and so you guys can like have it on film for you. But typically what I would say is I'd say, Joe and Mary, you know, do you remember when I was going over before about how we pay our claims out in 3 to 5 business days? And they would say, yes. I would say, okay, well, we actually developed what's called the freedom of choice certificate for all of our members, right? So what your certificate, and I give them ownership of the certificate already. I say what your certificate would do, or, you know, your certificate is good at any funeral home in America, anyone you wanted to go to. And what you would do with the certificate is pretty easy. So Mary, you know, God forbid Joe did not come home from work tomorrow. You're not just going to go into the funeral home and you're not going to take his life insurance policy and say, my husband had $50,000 of life insurance. What can I get for a funeral? Because funeral director is probably going to say, I'm glad he has life insurance, and the funeral is going to be $49,999. Right? They're going to try to take everything they can. So we designed this certificate so that your family doesn't have to go through that. Right? All you're going to do, Mary, is you're going to take this certificate into the funeral home. You're actually going to talk to the funeral director and negotiate the price of the funeral on the back of that certificate. Right? So if you knew you had $30,000 on that certificate and you negotiated the price of the funeral for $20,000, right? You put $20,000 on that line and you would sign it. You would give that certificate and the proof of death forms to the funeral director. Once he has that, everything from that point on is taken care of for your family. That next 3 to 5 day process of getting everybody together and getting the funeral planned, you guys can focus on that. You don't have to focus on the money, right? Because once the funeral director has that certificate, what he's going to do is he's going to call that 1-800 number on the bottom of that certificate, and he's going to talk directly to our claim department. Our claim department's going to send out 2 checks immediately. one check's going to go directly to the funeral director for that $20,000 that you had on the certificate. Anything left over in the policy, so that extra $10,000, that's going to go back to you, Mary, in a tax-free lump sum check 3 to 5 days later to help wrap up any other costs at the house there or get anything else taken care of, right? Now, Mary and Joe, do you have any questions on how your freedom of choice certificate would work? No? Can you see how easy they set it up for all of our members? Because we know this is the worst time in your family's life, and what we really don't want you to do is throw money at problems to get them to go away, right? Funeral director gets his money, you get your money, and no one has to really make a claim. Funeral director is going to take care of all that for you. You guys have any questions on how your freedom of choice certificate would work? And they would say no, right? Now, do you guys have any questions on how the freedom of choice certificate works? No? So and I can give you guys access to like some, extra training materials today. I can give you a couple websites to visit. And there's one on there specifically about the freedom of choice certificate, pitching this. That's really good. It's how I learned how to do it. But to be honest, when I first started, I just played that video for people. It does a great job of explaining how it works. And it's very, very simple, right? But where you can throw your personal touch in is at right here, explaining the benefits again. So at this point, this screen pops up where you're going to say is Joe. And if this is in your script too, it's pretty cut and dry in your script, right? The first concern we found out is making sure the final expenses are paid for, right? So you could say, Joe, as you can see, what the needs analysis recommends for your final expenses to be protected, it recommends you having $30,000 of whole life insurance in force. $30,000 of whole life insurance in force. Right now, Joe, you have an existing coverage of 0 for that. So it does show that need of 30,000, and then it recommends covering that amount. That way your funeral and final expenses would not be a burden to anybody down the road. Does that make sense why I recommend that amount to you, Joe? And I'll say yes. We're trying to get a bunch of small yeses right here. These tie downs are very important. Getting them to say yes over and over and over again, because at the end, they need to say yes, right? Get small yeses right here. You should probably get 10 to 15 of them right here. And then I never lump these people in the same category. I always usually break it down. Joe, this is what it recommends for you. Mary, this is what it recommends for you. Even though it's going to recommend typically the same thing, I still break it down. I would say, Mary, now what it recommends for you is 30,000 of whole life insurance as well. Once again, you have an existing coverage of 0 for that. So it does show that need of 30,000, and then it does recommend covering that need. That way your final expenses wouldn't be a burden to anybody down the road. Does it make sense why I recommended that amount for you? And I'll be like, yes. Okay, great. Once you hit continue, a next video is going to pop up. It's going to say, let's examine your need for monthly income protection. This video, income protection video, is great for you guys to watch. I'm telling you, watch this video. It'll help you explain income protection to people.
Your paycheck is the economic heartbeat of your family. It pays your rent, utilities, car payment, medical insurance, groceries, incidentals, leisure. Most families take this for granted until it stops. It is an economic heart attack. AIL's Income Protection Program, funded by Term Insurance, keeps your income flowing, which keeps economic life in the family. Our recommendation is that you provide up to 5 years of income replacement to take care of your family after you're gone, which would give your spouse and loved ones time to adjust to their loss, both emotionally and financially. If you died tomorrow, wouldn't you want your loved ones to know that you are thinking of them today?
All right, so like that video was what, 1.5 minutes? That did a great job of explaining income protection. So if you, in the list of concerns, if you explain it almost the same exact way, you don't really have to have them watch that video, but I want you guys to get familiar with the verbiage in that video so you can just say that to them, because that will sell it right then and there. Right? Remember I told you like the guy's heartbeat is like an economic heartbeat of the house? It's the same thing. right? That video used to not be as good as it is, but they changed that a little while ago. All these videos have been updated and they're great now, all right? But the way to explain the income protection to him or to her is kind of the same way you did final expenses. So you would say, Joe, what the needs analysis recommended for your income protection, it recommends 5 years of your income being protected. 5 years of your income, Joe, comes out to about $180,000. The way they recommend covering that is with a 10-year renewable and convertible term. Right now, Joe, you already have an existing coverage of $10,000 through work, right? So it really only shows that need of $170,000, and then it recommends covering that gap as well. Does that make sense to you why it recommended that amount, Joe? Yep. Same thing with Mary. Mary recommends you having 1 year of your income being protected. Comes out to about $18,000. Right now, you have an existing coverage of 0 for that, so it does recommend that full amount of $18,000 in income protection for you. All right. Do you guys have any questions why I would recommend that amount for you? I would say no. Do you guys have any questions on anything that went on when I went over right there? No? Okay. When you click continue, you might see a box that pops up that says, would you like to display ADB products in this offer? Always click yes. Just always click yes on that one. So it's going to say, let's examine your need for mortgage protection. Once again, mortgage protection. You can play this video for them too. I want you guys to watch this video as well. I'm not going to play it for you for sake of time. It's only 1 minute and 48 seconds. Pretty easy. Explain to them how important their house is. They know how important their house is. Now you can see right here, mortgage protection. Now, what I want you guys to take note of is this primary. So primary is Joe. So it's recommending Joe have $100,000 of accidental death benefit to make sure the mortgage is protected. Right now you have an existing coverage of 0 for that. So it does show that need of 100,000 and then it recommends covering that. That way, if you did pass away, Joe, you at least knew the mortgage was paid for the mortgage is paid off. Right? Any questions on that, Joe? Nope. Beautiful. Hit continue again at the bottom down there, and it's going to pop up a child education video. Another good video. This one's a little bit longer. I believe it's about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. Yeah, 2.5 minutes. A little bit longer, right? But once again, very good information in that video. Helps you paint the picture of child education. So you can see it recommends that the primary has this coverage on them. What it would do is it give them $100,000 of coverage to make sure that if something happened to Joe, that Steve could use that money to go to school. Right now, you have an existing coverage of 0 for that. It does show a need of $100,000, and then it recommends covering that amount. That way, you're fine. That way, you know, Steve's education would be protected down the road. Does it make sense why I recommended that amount for you, Joe? Yes. All right. We got to hit those tie downs. Those are very important. Okay. Once you have all those 4, now keep in mind, not every family is going to have all 4. Not every single person is going to have all 4. They might have 1, they might have 3, they might have, 2. But I just did a good example because I know what it was going to spit up for that family, right? So once you hit continue here, it's going to bring them to the offer sheet, right? You can see at the bottom of the screen, it's going to put up their offer in green. What I do at this screen here is I recap their benefits again. You can hit now, see, I'm clicking next benefit. You click next benefit, next benefit, next benefit. It'll put all of them in there. And the last thing you want to click is continue. When you hit continue, you'll be able to edit this stuff. Right? So you can see, and this is how I would kind of pitch them right here. I would say, Joe and Mary, to make sure that your final expenses were protected so that the funeral wouldn't be a burden down the road, you would have that protected. To make sure that your income is protected, Joe, would protect your income for the next 5 years. Mary, it would protect your income for the next 1 year. This would make sure that your mortgage was paid off if you did die. And then it will also make sure that Steve's education is paid for as well. Now, for all those benefits, it's about $240 a month, or probably looking at like about $100 for you, Mary, and about $140 for you, Joe. Now, is that comfortable for you right there? Or we can always kind of adjust that a little bit. right? And then I shut the hell up. I don't say anything until they say something right there. This might be the most awkward 30 seconds that you guys have. Stay in the pocket. I'm telling you. The first one that speaks here loses. So you got to get them to say something there. I would not say anything until they say something. They might go, I don't know, 240 is a little expensive. Okay, no worries. You know, we can actually adjust that a little bit for you here. And you can adjust this right on the screen, guys. You can drop it from 30,000 to 20,000. Right up just by clicking those buttons. And if you hit recalculate, it'll drop it down 40 bucks. It's 200 bucks now. You can drop down Joe's income of 5 years to 3 years. Hit recalculate. It's $163 now. You can keep messing around with these benefits here. If the mortgage wasn't that important, take that off. 155, right? You can play around with the numbers here. It's pretty easy to do it here. You can also do it in the super combo, which, you know, we'll go over with you here later in the week. But this is kind of as far as I really want you to get. I want you to get through the needs analysis and just kind of play around with this stuff, Rachel. Does that make sense, Demetrius? Right? Do you have eApp on your computer yet, Demetrius?
No, no one's shown me how to get it or where to get it from, like how to set it up.
Okay, so I can have Thomas help you out with it. It's pretty simple. It took like what, 10 minutes, Rachel? Pretty easy. It's not too bad. That's definitely something we want to definitely try to get downloaded today. When we had to
so bring my laptop.
Yeah. Like bring your laptop for sure.
Okay.
But I mean, once you get to that point, you know, if they're like, yeah, that 155 is comfortable, I'm like, okay, great. You know, as much as you need these benefits, as much as I'd like to help your family, you know, get these benefits, we do have to make sure you can qualify for the benefits. So I would hit submit. Once you hit submit, it's going to bring you into the super combo. Like, let me X out of this real quick. That's just like reflexes of me just clicking into it real quick. Come on. All right. So when you see this here, the application is called the super combo. Right. So if you click super combo, it'll bring up the actual application for coverage. And Rachel, I know you've seen this before here. Typically everything that's green or blue or teal or whatever color it is needs to be filled out. Right. And the good part about this needs analysis, or the super combo, sorry, is there's a validate button. You can hit the validate button and it will mark off everything that you have wrong or that needs to be put in there. So it's like a fail safe for you. So I usually hit validate twice every time just to make sure I don't miss anything. And I've been doing it for 5 years. So you should hit validate all the time. Okay. But once it takes a couple seconds to run and validate it. It's going to take even longer because there's going to be like 55 errors or something like that on this one. 71 errors, even better, right? So it'll tell you where the errors are, where you got to fill in with little X's, right? So it's pretty cool. But that's only really the only thing I really wanted to go through with you guys today is kind of getting through the list of concerns and then going right into the needs analysis and kind of filling that out and then working the back end of that with them, right? So do you guys have any questions about anything we went over or any questions in general for me about the back end of the sales process at this point? No? Just got to practice it more, that's all. All right. Cool. All right. Well, I mean, that's training. I know we're supposed to be more people on here, but I'm glad it was just us today, guys. Once it's done downloading to the cloud, I can send it over to you. And I have your videos from yesterday downloaded too, so I can send those to you too. So we're good there. But Rachel, I'm going to stop recording this right now. I'm going to do that.